Very excited to get into this conversation. Last night, Omar, I actually made a video after we got off and just continuing the conversation on talking about the importance of this type of knowledge and really understanding it to the point where we can self-activate, self-activate because a lot of people, even within this community, we talk a lot about healing, but there's also another aspect of healing that takes it a step further, which is activation. So I'm so glad again that we're having this conversation. I feel like you're going to share many missing links for a lot of us with this.
Yeah, and I hope so. I hope that everyone can take it and utilize it for something for themselves, because it is who we are, and it is the truth about, like you said, it activation. Like there are these things that we are not quite familiar with, aware of, or even capable of understanding, because for one, we just now have the science to prove it. The ancient texts are so convoluted and old that we can't actually understand or translate, because it was a whole nother time, whole nother language. And so understanding these really intuitive parts of ourselves that make us a whole organism, it takes us out of the idea that we're actually an organism. Like we're not a one thing. We're a multitude of things. We're a multiverse. And so, one of the things that I was mentioned last night was about how whenever you look at these tiny little organisms that are working within your body, and you connect with them and you allow them to actually do their process correctly without any influence, they heal. Everything heals, everything changes. And that's from circumstances in your life, from perceptions of how you feel about yourself, to healing actual parts of your body. Like it's real. And this is the way that the ancients, Yeshua, the Buddhas, the Saint Germain, I'm trying to get some women in here.
I know, right? They're barely named.
I know, it's crazy. One of the most powerful women were, I'm having a crazy brain fart. She was actually before Eve.
These are medium molecular machines, and they are doing
this. Put the link.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead. Sorry, I was cueing the video.
But she's Lucy. Her name was Lucy.
Yes.
Probably one of the most powerful, influential women of our time, as human, because she was before Eve, and she defied the laws of man. She defied the possession. She says, "I'm your equal. I didn't come from you. We were created together." And that's another illusion, like, oh, woman was made from a man's rib.
No. Yes, the Lucy essence would be similar to the Lilith essence, right? Yep. Exactly. So, and there are a lot of people, especially within this group, who have been tapping into that Lilith vibe, or her essence is in alignment right now. So a lot of people are capturing that, and she's just popping up everywhere. So it's interesting. Yep.
Yeah, and there were many women of that ancient time who literally commanded the animals, commanded the air, commanded the fire, just by like whispering their hands and fingers. And one of the things that is very unfortunate, especially with this identity of Lilith and Lucy, is that they've demonized her into like the succubus. And it's like, that's really messed up. She's not the succubus. She's just free. And that's why they try to make her into like the succubus is like the sexual deity that comes and seduces you at night. And it's like, that can happen.
Oh, I'm sorry. It started playing again.
It's ready to go. Ready to go.
Yeah, it just started playing by itself. It literally was on pause and it just played by itself. So
the information was ready to be known, apparently. But just moving forward really quick, that whole identity and that whole thing is just brought up due to man's ignorance and fear of a woman's power. And the issue is that they couldn't even identify that same feminine power within themselves, so they tried to cast it out of the world by doing all these things with women. And it's something that we need to really get away from, and really understanding that we are all one thing, and you cannot have something else without the other. Like, it's impossible, and we literally won't survive. So
do you feel like the state of imbalance right now is due to too many parts of the whole trying to be separate from that whole piece within like this realm right now? Because I feel like there's a lot of pulling of body parts, but etherically, like, give me this arm and I am the leg and you are the head, and it's just a scattered body all over energetically.
I think that you literally just described it exactly how it is, because and it's a perfect description of exactly what's happening. You have everyone trying to define themselves in whatever they're trying to define themselves as, but no one's actually working together. Like, you can look around, and from sex to cultures to fucking skin tones, like, it's all division, and everyone's trying to identify themselves through the ego and not recognizing that we are one community. And it does take that shift. I mean, the shift needs to happen because, for one, there needs to be self-acknowledgement. Like, people need to acknowledge that they are a self. But through the acknowledgement of self, you shouldn't be geared and pulled towards the ego. You should be pulled more towards the identity of what it truly is. Like, if I'm self and these people around me are selves, and we're all a bunch of selves, then that's just what it is. We're all a bunch of something. We can't live without each other. But that's the ego can't. The ego is like, nah, I don't need you. And it's like, well, you do need your arm, and you do need your toes. Stand up straight if you didn't have toes. So, and you need your fingernails. You need your toenails. You need all these parts. And so we, like you said, we need to start recognizing right now that we, instead of being so divided through the identity of who I am and what I'm doing, we need to be more reciprocated through how people feel and how things are actually happening in the world, which is things are moving towards us getting to that point. It's just so much chaos right now, but we just have to break through. And I think we're on our way. I definitely feel that the feminine energy of the earth has become stronger. It was
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you put your microphone closer to your?
Yes. But the feminine energy of the world is now stronger, because the Kundalini and the chakra of the earth has moved. It's moved from the Hindu or the Indian Ocean, going up into that whole, like, through Egypt and through all the Indias and all those countries that make up Eastern America. I mean, the Eastern world. And it's shifted to now where it's coming through the Americas.
Wait, is that what's happening? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot to do with the Mayans. That's kind of what they were saying as far as the shift of 2012. Like, the earth was actually moving with the sun. And as you know, in like the yugas of the Hindu, like the age of Aquarius, the golden age, the silver age, we actually circulate another star, which is our sister star, Sirius B. And we are now coming from being separated. Like, we do this little motion right here. We just dance around each other. And we were pulling apart for the past 13,000 years. And now, at the time of 2012, which is not really 2012,
right,
started to begin to come back towards each other. But what that does is it speeds us both up. Both suns are now moving faster, which means the Earth is now moving faster, which means it's also going through the Milky Way galaxy. As it spins, it's shooting off a beam of light or plasma. And we pass through that, which energizes us in a whole nother way. So now that we're coming back together, we're speeding up. We just have to consciously change. And so the shift is actually happening with the sun and the earth more so than it's happening with us. We're just along for the ride. And so the earth is actually going through its own metamorphosis, where she's changing, she's growing, she's developing, she's consciously awakening herself which means that we have to follow the same suit. But because we're on the playing field, it kind of drives us into a higher vibration, but that also pulls the lower vibrations. And so that's why you see this huge divide.
Right. You're going to have that opposition automatically, the automatic response with duality.
Exactly. And so we're seeing the chaos of those lower vibrations. We have to see it, but we're also seeing the rise of consciousness. And so right now, we just need to support Mother Earth, as we are the cells of her body, what we're going to go into in a second, to help her to evolve as well. Because she is living just more than we are. Like, we can't survive without her, which means that literally, if we don't heal our individual selves, then we're going to just spread cancer throughout the world. And it's going to actually deteriorate the earth. But, you know, she's powerful, and she's going to say, we got to kill out the cancer. And it's happened many a times. And so we don't want to be the ones who lose our species due to the fact that we're causing, you know, discomfort to the earth. But, you know, she will recycle us if she has to, just like we will recycle cells in our body whenever they're not healthy.
Right. Wow.
Yep.
And it's interesting because most of us, we have this knowing, but the way that you're bringing it to the body is like putting a cap on everything that we've been, you know, trying to figure out in the dark. Like, you're bringing a lot of light to the common sense of all of this.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You said it perfectly. It's actually common sense. It's very common sense. It's not difficult. It's not rocket science. It's literally common fucking sense. But the issue is that people, they don't want to have common sense. They don't want to admit that, like, oh, well, maybe you're right, and maybe I don't know shit. People are like, no, I know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool too. But so leave the earth and come back with some more information, and then holler at me. But until you can do that, let's try to figure out what it is here that we can do to understand our world fully, and also the world inside of us. Right. Amazing. And I think getting to that video would be amazing, because I wanted to definitely get into the DNA, which was the first video that you're going to see. It's going to be not necessarily the DNA. It's going to show you a lot of the DNA, but I want everybody to really actualize these little tiny organisms that are in our body working. They are, you are the universe. You are the center of the entire Milky Way galaxy. And it's real. Like, when you can understand that your body is the center of the universe to these little organisms, and they see you as goddess or God, everything you think and feel, they are living for you. Just like we don't know what the Milky Way galaxy center is doing. We don't have no clue, but we know we're part of it. And as small as we may feel, anything and everything we do is going to affect the whole of the system. So that's why it's important to really see these tiny little organisms within your body, because everything you do, think, and feel, you're going to affect this whole system.
So what you're about to get into, and because we had a little snippet last night, so I'm familiar with at least the first 3 minutes, right? What you're going to get into, the fact that you said you referred to us as sometimes feeling small, but understanding how important we are to the whole. What you're about to show us with these little microorganisms here, is it safe to say that this is also like us on a level? These little machines, exactly. They're like the little humans inside of of our multiverse. Okay, so with that perspective, it's great to watch this and listen.
Yeah. And, you know, like, think of each and every single one of these things as the life on Earth. You have ants, you have plants, you have humans, you have cats, you have sea animals, you have anemones, you have creatures that crawl in the sand, you have creatures that live in the dirt, you have creatures that live in the sky, you have tardigrades. Tardigrades are crazy. I wish I can have some time to show you what a tardigrade is, but they're these little tiny bear-looking, worm-looking things that can survive anything. But you have all these organisms that make up the whole Earth. But then you have tiny little Earth that make up a star system. But then there's all these other planets. So, you know, looking at it in that sense is that each individual thing that you're about to see has its own consciousness and its own intelligence, just like me and you do. And they communicate. So by all means, press play.
All right. So we're going to take a look at this video. And if you need me to stop and you need to explain something, just let me know.
Okay.
These are tiny molecular machines, and they are doing this inside your body right now. To understand why, we have to zoom out. Every day in an adult human body, 50 to 70 billion of your cells die. Either they're stressed or damaged or just old. But this is normal. In fact, it's called programmed cell. But to make up for all these lost cells, right now, billions of your cells are dividing, essentially creating new cells. And that process of cell division, also called mitosis, well, it requires an army of tiny molecular machines. So let's take a closer look. DNA is a good place to start, the double helix molecule we always talk about. This is a scientifically accurate depiction of DNA created by Drew Barry at the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute of Medical Research. If you unwind the two strands, you can see that each has a sugar phosphate backbone connected to the sequence of nucleic acid base pairs, known by the letters A, T, G, and C. Now, the strands run in opposite directions, which is important when you go to copy DNA. Copying DNA is one of the first steps in cell division. Here, the two strands of DNA are being unwound and separated by the tiny blue molecular machine called helicase. Helicase literally spins as fast as a jet engine. The strand of DNA on the right has its complementary strand assembled continuously, but the other strand is more complicated because it runs in the opposite direction. So it must be looped out with its complementary strand assembled in reverse, section by section. At the end of this process, you have two identical DNA molecules, each one a few centimeters long, but just a couple nanometers wide. So to prevent the DNA from becoming a tangled mess, it is wrapped around proteins called histones, forming a nucleosome. These nucleosomes are bundled together into a fiber known as chromatin, which is further looped and coiled to form a chromosome, one of the largest molecular structures in your body.
And look at all that DNA. It's a universe. And it buzzes, it vibrates, it makes sound. They're moving. And then when you zoom out, it's one tiny little chromosome.
Wow. Wait a second. Pause for a second. So if you want to just explain, so you mentioned this last night, but it literally looked like a zipper being unzipped, like an actual zipper. So what was going on was the micro machines was unzipping the DNA, separating, and then replicating, correct?
Yep, and that's what RNA is. It's the replication of DNA, and so it's recording. And so the way that machine works, it unzips, it records one side, it makes a copy, and then it puts it back together again.
Wow.
And that's where you see the three strands. You see the inside strand coming in, you see the one going up to the left, and you see one going to the bottom. And it's making that at immense speeds, like literally faster than a jet engine. Like that's a lot of power right now that's happening within our body. But if you see these little lines in the video, these little like light bluish, purple lines, those are chromosomes themselves. So see how many chromosomes you have, and the chromosomes are all those little tiny things wound together really, really tight. And so if you can even dive into your DNA, it'll look like an entire universe. Like just go back like maybe 4 seconds so they show like the image of the a little bit further, a little bit like right there. Now think about this. Like look how that looks like an entire universe. It's its own thing. You have atoms, you have the proteins, you have the chromatin, but all that stuff's really tiny. And so the fact that we can look at this image and not even be able to tell whether we're looking at something inside of ourselves or looking up at something in space, like it's immense with energy. And yet, if you go back, once we finished playing it, you'll see that these little tiny things make up the tiny chromosomes that live within the one cell. And
just one cell. All of this that makes up one tiny chromosome that is literally in the nucleus of one cell.
Yeah, and there's 23 moving into 26 chromosomes. So the fact that you have 23 of these universes within one cell, but then you have like trillions of cells, like what the hell? Like what the hell? What is that? What the hell does that mean? Like we are endless. And that's what I like. In the last time we talked, I actually mentioned that how whenever you dive inside the body, you recognize that it's endless. Oh God, that's hilarious. You recognize that you were just as endless. What is happening right now? You are just as endless as the sky is and the universe is, expands outward. The macros versus the micros. So you as an organism are the apex, so to say. So everything above you and outside of you is infinite. But yet, when you dive on the inside of you, it's also infinite. You know how long it'd take for us to possibly shrink down to the size and get to one of these tiny little functions? It'd seem like a light years.
Just like when we talk about traveling out to space to different planets and so forth, they always talk about the distance in light years, and it's literally the same inward. It will take light years to go on inside of ourselves on a quantum level to get to that.
So to get from your toes to your head will take in more time, infinity-wise, as relativity calls it. It'll take forever for you to get from your toes to your head as a particle that is the size of these guys.
Wow. That puts a lot into perspective.
Yeah. Let's finish watching that video.
Yes.
And you hear how it makes sound. We're always making sound. We're always moving. We're never still.
You can actually see chromosomes under a microscope in dividing cells. Only then do they take on their characteristic shape. Otherwise, the DNA is more strewn inside the nucleus. The process of dividing a cell takes around an hour.
Cell dividing.
This footage is from a time lapse. You can see how the chromosomes line up on the equator of the cell. Now, when everything is right, they are pulled apart into the two new daughter cells, each one containing an identical copy of DNA. Now, simple as this looks, the process is incredibly complicated and requires even more fascinating molecular machines to accomplish it. So let's look at a single chromosome. One chromosome.
This is actually what you saw by those two cells. That was actually what you under a microscope. They looked under a microscope and they actually just colored the chromosomes so that you can see them. But that was real time. That's what it actually looks like. You know, your chromosomes are beginning to like move along this equator, and then they begin to separate, and that's when the copying of the RNA and the DNA is happening, so that it can.
So at the equator of a cell, why is it important for the chromosomes to gather at the equator? Is it to?
It's because it's the center. It's you know, it's where the gravity is. You know, if you can imagine that around a cell, it's the nucleus. You know, once again, so it's just how it works. You know, I don't really know the actual science behind it, but it's just how it works. But yeah, let's finish watching this next process of the chromosome.
Fibers, which guide and help align them in the correct position. The microtubules are connected to the chromatid at the kinetochore, here colored red. The kinetochore consists of hundreds of different proteins working together to achieve multiple objectives. In fact, it's one of the most sophisticated molecular mechanisms inside your body. The kinetochore is central to the successful separation of the chromatids. It creates a dynamic connection between the chromosome and the microtubules. For a reason no one's yet been able to figure out, the microtubules are constantly being built at one end and deconstructed at the other. While the chromosome is still getting ready, the kinetochore sends out a chemical stop signal to the rest of the cell, shown here by the red molecules, basically saying this chromosome is not yet ready to divide.
Wow.
The kinetochore also mechanically senses tension. When the tension is just right and the position and attachment are correct, all the proteins get ready, shown here by turning green. At this point, the stop signal broadcasting system is not switched off. Instead, it is literally carried away from the kinetochore down the microtubules by a dynein motor. That's the walking guy. This is really what it looks like. It has long legs so it can avoid obstacles and step over the kinesins, molecular motors that walk in the opposite direction. Personally, I'm astounded by these tiny molecular machines, how they're able to routinely and faithfully execute their functions billions of times over inside your body at this exact time. I'm also amazed by the scientists who were able to work out how this happens in such detail that we could create realistic depictions of them, like you saw in the animations in this video. And perhaps the most amazing thing is just how much is left to be discovered, like figuring out how exactly the chromatids are pulled to opposite ends of the cell. There is still so much that we don't quite know. You know, what I find exciting is that in science fiction, for decades, we've been writing about tiny nanobots that will be injected into our bloodstreams that can kill us. What this suggests, the existence of these tiny molecular machines in science, suggests that there isn't a physical limit that would prevent that. And so I think it's pretty likely that in future, we will be able to develop our own tiny molecular machines that will be able to repair our bodies better than they can repair themselves.
Wow.
So
that was amazing.
Right?
I would have to watch that like 10 times just
I've literally been watching that like every day on repeat for the past 2 or 3 weeks because I'm still trying to comprehend like what, like I get it because I study the science and I understand, but what, like, and to think about this, those little tiny long-legged things that were walking across your chromatins, not the chromatins, but the telomeres, they are absolutely mind-bogglingly giant compared to the little machine that records the DNA. It's equivalent to, let's say if you were the little tiny machine, then that thing would be bigger than the World Trade Center. It would be
so I'm the tiny machine who's unzipping and copying the DNA. Yep. And then there's like the big Empire State Building like other machine that's doing the walking and transfer.
Yeah, but that's not even a direct relevance because it's way bigger than that. I was just wanting to give people reference of like how big it is.
Yeah.
But it's way bigger than that. It's so big that it's actually it's in a whole other universe. Like it's a whole other thing. But the thing that's even better is that walkie thingy has no clue of the tiny little machine. They live in two separate universes. They work together, but they don't live on the same plane.
Wow.
And so think about that. Once again, we're multiverses. We are the beginning of something and the end of something. We have life forces that are super tiny, and we have life forces that are super big. But at the same time, they're all tiny to us because the cell in our body, you know, we can't even see it. Like if you try to look at a cell, you can't see it. You need a microscope. But then you have this whole universe living inside your cell. They don't know that they're Omar. They just know that they're alive in this universe and they're conscious.
Right.
They're aware. They know what they're doing. They have a job. They have a purpose. They're living out that purpose. And the moment that they stop living out that purpose is whenever the universe starts to cause chaos. And so the question is, what are we causing? What chaos are we causing for ourselves? What universe are we living in? What universe are we allowing our insides to feel? You know, and that's kind of what, going back to the macros versus the micros, when you were saying that, you know, you have this feeling. They feel what you feel. If our star were to suddenly get hot as hell, we feel that shit. In fact, it'll probably blow us to smithereens. Now think about how our feelings cause chaos and kill cells in these tiny organisms in our body.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's relative. You know, your shitty thought that makes you react to somebody that causes anger inside of you.
It causes a whole chaotic situation within that, the universe is within your body, just from that emotion, just from that not paying attention and not transmuting that emotion and letting it sit. Yeah.
And so having full understanding of everything that you're doing, why you're doing it, when you're doing it, where you're doing it, who you're doing it to, is going to have a direct impact on your inner world. And if you can think of it, like I like to say to myself, I'm going to actually walk off into the back. I'm going to carry, you guys are going to come with me on a journey.
Yeah, sure. And also, are you at a hard stop at 10 o'clock still?
I can go a little bit after because I have a car that's going to be coming to get me.
Okay.
A little bit after, but I definitely have to be done by 10:10 so I can make it to my class.
Okay.
But that is the next beautiful part, is that the way we treat ourselves and the things that we're doing to ourselves is going to have a drastic impact to the things that we are experiencing in life, but mostly the inner world. Mm-hmm. And what I've been doing, what I was going to say a little bit ago, what I've been doing is just making sure that I think about these little things before I react. Like, I know I feel a certain way, but what am I doing to myself? Mm-hmm. Like, I love my microtubules. I love my DNA and those little tiny things crawling around in me right now. I love them. So how can I show them love and support? And the only way to do it is by actually being open, being honest, being truthful, being aware. How do you feel? Why do you feel this way? Is it really the circumstance, or is it actually the fact that you're probably holding on to some trauma? Because trauma is the first thing that deteriorates a cell. If you want to easily and quickly hurt your body, go to some trauma and don't forget that shit and don't let it go. Mm-hmm. You will die. It will kill you. It literally will. And that's what the next video is about. It's about understanding the cell. You know, we already saw what makes the cell. We saw the inside of the cell. Now let's take a look at what the cells are doing.
Okay. So we will play that now. Oh, I have to share. Sorry. All right.
Our identity is not inside our body. Our identity is picked up by protein antennas on the surface of our cells. The body is like a television set, and there's a broadcast coming in. And the relevance about that is sometimes the television breaks, you say the television's dead. And I say, yeah, but is the broadcast still there? Mm-hmm. There's a number of studies of people who have heart transplants. And when they receive a transplant for somebody else, they start to pick up characteristics of the person who donated the heart. Now, some people say that's cellular memory. As a cellular biologist, I think you're giving great credit of memory to a cell. A cell is lucky to remember if it's a liver cell or a skin cell, not if it likes nuggets and beer. But the story I just want to emphasize is this: a young girl received a heart from another young girl. And once the heart was implanted, just shortly after, she had very vivid nightmares of being murdered. And they repeated themselves every night. And so finally, the doctor said, well, where did this heart come from? And it was from another girl who was murdered. And the relevance about that was the nightmares were so vivid that when the police questioned her about what she had seen, they were able to catch the killer. The point was the heart cells are still having the self antennas of the person who has died. And so as long as the heart was still present, it was downloading the identity into that heart. And the relevance is, yes, the girl's dead, but she's still there. Why? Because if the heart has the receptors, it still shows that there's a source that's feeding this individual person. Between all this particular data, it is profoundly important to understand the nature of some quantum physics, energy fields, and identity, and that we are not in this body. We are being broadcast to this body. As a scientist, and not spiritual for 40 some years, and then in 1 minute after understanding the nature of the membrane, it's like 2 + 2 is 4. I'm not in here. It was oh my God, I'm not here. And that concept of being outside, then being immortal, was interesting. But then I wanted to add this part because I thought this was the exciting part about my connection with my spirit and my body. I asked myself as a scientist, I said, well, why have a body and a spirit? Why not just be spirit? The answer for that is this. This is a virtual reality suit. You jump into this suit, you drive it around, the experiences of this suit are sent back to source. That's where we start to recognize your brain activity is not contained in your head. You can use magnetoencephalograph probes outside of your head, and you can read your brain activity. So you're broadcasting back to the field. And that's why we can see a sunset. We can taste that chocolate. We can smell that rose. We came here to experience life and to create. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the whole story might be the biggest cosmic joke in the world, and that is this. We have been told that when we die, if we did a good job on planet Earth, we can go to heaven. I would like to suggest something. You were born into heaven. This is where you came to create. This is where you came to experience. If you don't like the creation, the significance is we're not living our lives, we're living the lives of programs. And if you don't like the program, the new biology is the one that says you can rewrite it. And if you rewrite it to make your creation not the one you bought as the creation, you will manifest heaven on earth. You will wake up every day with the glory of being in the most spectacular planet and the ability to create life. And that's what the joy is all about. What would happen if you stopped playing the program? And the answer is so wonderful because all of you have taken that red pill at some point. And that was when you fell deeply in love with somebody. I said, what was happening when you fell deeply in love? And I said, for the first time in your life, you stopped thinking because everything you wanted is now right in front of your face. And when you stop thinking and you become what is called mindful, then you are in absolute control. I said, look, your life could suck every day until you met this person and then heaven. And 24 hours later, you can experience heaven. And what was the difference? You stopped thinking and started being present. And so it becomes important if you want to transform, then you stay present and you repeat what you like, and repetition is what will reprogram your subconscious. So as long as you stop the old talk, put in what you want, and repeat what you want, you have an opportunity to rewrite any program in your life.
That was amazing.
Yes.
Wow.
And I'd have to say that that's actually, that I'm glad that that video came up, but that is not the actual video that I wanted to actually show you, but that's perfect because.
And guess what? That was the video that was playing by itself. Beginning.
That's hilarious. I'm not surprised. I'm going to share 2 other videos so that your group can have them for their own listening pleasures.
Okay.
This really quick topic that I wanted to talk about as the community. Now let's just go back to what we saw in the first video. We saw all these different tiny little organisms that live within one cell. And then we know that we are made up of trillions upon trillions of cells. I'm just gonna, let me get a better view. If we know that we are made up of trillions of cells, and we know that we're made up of all these, one individual cell is made up of trillions of particles and processes. What would that make us? Does that make us a whole human, or does it make us a community? So we have a community within us that works together. Without this community cooperating, they're not competing. They're not trying to be the best cell. They're not trying to say, I got this and you don't. I'm a white blood cell, you a red blood cell. Or they're not saying, well, I'm a liver cell and you a intestine cell. Like, they're not doing that. They're a community of cells that work together to give you the identity that you are. Now, how do we then relate that to our world? We live in a world where there's many people. You bumping into folks. We have many ideas. Maybe the liver cell and the heart cell don't get along today. Why? Because the organism itself may be having some issues. Like, we never think about what Mother Earth goes through. We never think about, like, how do you feel? Like, I always ask, Ma, how you feel today? Like, what you going through? I know that your peoples are crazy right now. Like, things are crazy. So if the world is crazy that I'm experiencing, then how do you feel today? And how am I making your world more crazy? Am I responding only from ego? Am I arguing with a man or a woman due to the fact that they don't see me, or I have expectations of them? Like, me and my wife got into an argument last night, and the argument comes down to two things: fear and expectations. And so this morning, whenever we were talking, I'm like, look, like, for one, if we both can recognize that we have some fear, we have some trauma based around that fear, but then let's talk about the expectations we have for each other and how those are actually always going to lead us into doom. Like, we should have no expectations whatsoever of anyone or anything. The only expectations that we should have is controlling how we feel. Period. And that's another mind fuck, because that means, like, oh, I do have to identify the trauma. Oh no. I do have to forgive those people who hurt me. Oh no. I do have to make friends with my worst enemy, because it's all an illusion. We're a community. And I'm even starting to trying to figure out, maybe the earth is in a cycle where she needs to experience the chaos of life and death. Maybe she needs to experience animals attacking each other and killing each other. That way, the carcass of the animal starts to decay, which releases nitrogen into the ground, which allows plants to grow, not just where the animal died, but within a 500 radius of that animal, because the nitrogen is seeping into the earth, and the earth is then taking that nitrogen and moving it with water throughout the whole land.
That's and it's interesting, because when we compare the natural cycles of animals and other creatures, and the cycle of life and death, and eating when hungry and so forth, and creating community, it seems like it flows the way it should be to keep in balance, right? Just like you brought up the soil and everything. But when it comes to humans, and again, you asked this question in the beginning, who are we in the body, really? Because we seem to create these little pockets of complications that the rest of nature does not create.
Exactly. And that's the one thing that I'm really trying to understand as a whole. Because it's like, wait, none of this makes sense. Like, if you look at anything in the world, any insect, any mammal, any sea creature, any plant, they are all working together solely to survive.
Right.
Solely to move on the evolution of our consciousness, of their consciousness. I was talking to a group of people the other day, because they were talking about veganism and, you shouldn't eat animals. And I'm like, well, the craziest part about that is that you don't even realize that plants can feel you eating them. They actually have a mechanism that relates to them as a screen. They release a gas and a hormone as soon as they're picked, as soon as they're brushed. And that gas literally travels and tells other plants, I'm being eaten. Careful. There's danger. So if you're eating a freshly picked salad, the plant can hear you crunching on it. How's that sound? And so she was like, that's not true. And I'm like, see, you're not even willing to listen to some new knowledge based on the fact that you're so stern in your veganism and your vegetarianism that you don't even want to hear it, because it'll now put the process back on you that you're still killing something. Now, I'm not the bad guy. You're the bad guy. But at first, I'm the bad guy. I'm the bad guy. And I'm like, and see, but it's not the truth. The truth of the reality is you're still killing something. And that means that maybe you don't think that the plant's life is just as precious as the animal.
Right. It's just perspective, because again, we in this level of consciousness, we do need food, nutrients from food to survive, right? Yeah. But if we understood the process, same as when, the ancients would hunt, they would actually give gratitude for the sacrifice before eating.
Exactly.
So if the vegan situation was more of like, oh, I understand that this plant is sentient. However, I'm grateful for this sacrifice. You know what I mean? They just won't see that. And that's what creates that vibrational chaos.
Discord. Yeah, I agree. And something that you just said pointed out a really important fact, which is we should have the understanding that everything is sacred. And so whenever you're going to do, let's say you're going to eat an animal or eat a plant or hunt, the ancients knew that animal was very much aware of its sole purpose of giving its life in that moment for you. But you have to then create a sacrament or a sacrament to the animal. You have to say, I like every cell in this animal's body, I appreciate you. I love you and I thank you. I send a vibration of love into your death. And therefore, the love that I'm sending into your death is a vibration, which is going to be picked up by those tiny little organisms that live within you that created this whole animal. And now I'm going to ingest that same love within myself, and it's going to heal my body and not hurt my body.
Wow.
And that's why they say the things of pray, bless your food, pray over your food. Because we misunderstand it. Most people be like, oh, thank the Lord for this meal. No, don't thank the Lord for the meal. Thank the meal and the cells and the process of every single ancestor of that animal or that plant that developed itself specifically in a way so that you can partake in it right now. Thank the entirety of the experience. The Lord don't got nothing to do with this. and if the Lord had anything to do with it, it'd be this: enjoy. because it's all here for us to play with. Like Bruce Lipton said, we are born into heaven. Earth is heaven. Whenever I speak to astronauts and I hear astronauts talk about their experiences above the earth, they realize that Earth is heaven. Earth is majesty. We only see it from the bottom and from the ground level. But when you see the Earth from space, I started looking at images of satellites, taking pictures of Earth just to witness the majesty that we are on. And whenever you really see it, you realize that we are truly on heaven. Like heaven.
which is and I feel like it's us. And I feel like this is why, the debates whether the Earth is flat or round and so on. And I say neither. So exactly. it's a torus field of energy that we're seeing, and there's an infinite plane of what it is. And I really feel like the Earth is the heart of the universe that we are experiencing. And when the heart stops, the whole body dies, or the whole universe dies. So this is why Earth seems to be so special, because when we even go through like the mythologies and the extraterrestrial stories, and it's just like everyone's coming to Earth. Why? Isn't your home like magical? Aren't we trying to leave here? But they're coming here because it's the center it's the heart. And like he was even saying in his video with that heart transplant, it's so powerful. But
think about that. Think about how if you transplant another organ from another person, you instantly are downloaded with their life.
Instantly.
Like,
yeah.
That means that we are, once again, memory chips. Like, every cell is just a memory chip. So going back to the healing portion of that, how do we heal? How do we reprogram ourselves to remember purity? How do we program ourselves to remember wholeness? How do we program them to forget the trauma and let it go? Because that's where the true healing lies. That's where the true healing takes place. You can, like, if you don't, that's very unfortunate. Like, if you don't experience something peaceful and if you don't let things go and you pass along your organ, then somebody's going to experience your chaos.
Right.
But the question is, how do we actually get there? How do we break down the ego and allow for soul homeostasis, which means balance? So what I've been learning, going back to the fear and expectations, if we're a community, I should not fear anybody in my community because we are one.
Mm-hmm.
And I should also not expect anything from my community because we are one. I should only expect myself to be just as genuine, loving, and kind to my community as they are to me. And some people argue, well, that's still an expectation, but only of yourself, though. And then what we see is, whenever you start to vibrate at that level of self-appreciation, it starts to reciprocate to the people around you.
Right.
And then you started, everybody that didn't vibe with that, they'll just fall off. They'll literally, you just won't see them ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you have all these positive people in your life who vibe with that reciprocation of your energy. So individually, we have to both be responsible for ourselves of healing the trauma, healing the cells, reprogramming the DNA, and then allowing that to actually reciprocate outside of us in our world. And you may get pushback at first because you got to clear the vibrations. You know, once again, you're going to have those low dense vibrations that are still going to try to come into your field because you're still in this, you're in this flux. But now that I've literally been able to get past that flux and raise my vibration to where I like to call it actualizing life, because I'm actualizing my life. If I think of something, it happens. If I ask for something, it shows up. That's even with fear. No lie, I had this dream the other day that brought up some insecurity. 2 days later, the same shit, even the person in the dream resembled the person in real life. And I'm like, God damn it, intuition.
That's how powerful.
Yeah, and I'm like, you trying to get me to forgive. But then at one point, I'm listening to a song. I'm feeling the song. Every fucking block I walk to, somebody's playing the same song. And I'm like, and I just had to pause. I'm like, yo, am I that powerful? Like universe, source, am I that powerful? I need some answers right now. Like, am I doing this? And if I'm doing this, then I really got to heal, because if I can cause these good vibrations to happen all around me, then I'm also causing the negative ones. And I'm also have to be responsible for the things that I see in the world and in myself and in my circumstances that I don't like are coming directly from me.
Mm-hmm.
And you're giving me an opportunity to see it in my world so that I can heal it within myself.
That's a high level of self-accountability and self-awareness right there. And I'm glad that you brought up the oneness, because I feel like even when in communities, when we talk about we are one, I even feel like that's misunderstood in a sense where it's mental, in a sense where our consciousness, we all have to have the same goal and be the same and think the same and turn into this hive-minded consciousness with this we are one, agenda. But it's more to it. And it's just your inner community, and your inner community, the community, they don't all have the cells, they don't all have the same task, so it's like, no, we are not meant to think the same, believe the same, be the same, and do the same. So that oneness, I feel, needs to be just looked at on a deeper level for sure.
Yeah, and reword it. And, you know, that's just what it comes down to. You can, like, the only thing that got me to this point of understanding was constant self reevaluation and not bullshitting. You know, something that my wife said to me last night, it pissed me off. And the only reason it pissed me off is because I recognized what she was saying was something that I was trying to say to her that she didn't reciprocate, and it made me feel insecure. And so I was like, well, you know, what you did was the same thing I did. And she's like, well, why are you trying to bring that up? I'm like, not for the purpose of argument's sake, for the purpose of it actually shows me that I understand how you feel in this moment because I felt that way in that other moment. So maybe I should actually take some accountability for what I'm actually doing, because maybe I'm not respecting your feelings the way that I should. And maybe I'm causing its own chaos between us because I'm not being accountable for what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making it an ego thing, like, nah, you don't tell me what to do. I'm going to do my thing. And if you tell me what to do, isn't that control? And I'm like, damn, that sounds like the same thing you said to me. Shit, maybe I'm wrong. And I got to look at that. And I got to reevaluate that. And then I got to see how it affects my life. Like, possibly I am wrong. And the idea is not to say you, but what am I doing to create this scenario? And again, that accountability only comes with self-evaluation. You know, it's been 6 years of me really, really, really focusing on, like, what are you doing, Omar? Why are you thinking that? Why are you having these feelings? Why you feel that way about this person? Why are you mad at them? Why you feel insecure? Like, why? And constant.
Mm-hmm.
I said that to one friend of mine, and she's like, oh my God, that sounds exhausting. Like, hell yeah it is. But it's not as exhausting as always battling my ego.
Right. If you're going to choose,
that's way more exhausting.
Right. That
really
resistance and
me out of
even
control.
Suppressing the emotions and suppressing the traumas is takes a lot of work.
It does. But we're capable of it. We're all capable of it. We just have to step into it by acknowledging, accepting, and then just being accountable. You know, stop bullshitting yourself and stop making excuses. That was the first thing I said. Omar, you bullshitting. And you making a lot of goddamn excuses, homie. Like, you making so many excuses that you have a list of excuses now. You have a notepad full of excuses, and you ready to just check them off. It's that reason. No, it's that reason. No, it's that reason. But at the end of the day, it's just me. I caused it myself. But yeah, but that's what it is, and that's how it goes. And if we can't get to that initial idea of being accountable for ourselves, then you will never be able to get to those cells. You will never be able to reprogram. You will never connect with your DNA. You will never know who you are because you're lying.
So before you go, do you have any like, where do we start with communicating with our microorganisms, ourselves? Any specific techniques that you can share that we can just build off of on our own?
Compassion for
self.
Yep. Think about it. Compassion for your body, compassion for your inner child, sends compassion to yourself, it sends compassion to your inner world. And so we have to have more compassion for ourselves. We kick our ass more than anybody on this earth. And think about what that does. It disconnects you from yourself because you're being mean to yourself. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to be around somebody being mean. You literally will step away and out of a situation if someone is mean to you. So we need to start with compassion. And if we can't show ourselves compassion, then what are we really doing?
Right. We're hating ourselves. Literally. And we're disturbing the multi-universe within us, creating that chaos.
Exactly. And so allowing yourself to have compassion, allowing yourself to have a sense of calmness. Compassion is the only way to heal trauma. You can't heal trauma through forcing it away. You can't think it away. Mm-hmm. Have compassion for that little girl, little boy inside. And then you have to have compassion for all those little tiny organisms. Because if it wasn't for them, you literally wouldn't exist. So I'll say that, it's compassion. It's a must.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. This was very enlightening. A lot to think about, a lot to build on. And again, I know that you actually do this. This is what you do. You help people heal through their cells, through the, you help people confront their inner child, and so forth. So just before you leave, again, can you just drop your information so that people can, look for you, find you? If they-
Yeah. Well, again, my name is Omar Davis. My business that I run and our website is crashbell.com, and that's crash and then BELL.com, like crashing into a bell that makes a vibration along the earth. That's what it means. And on social media, it's the same. You can find us at Crash Bell. My IG is Crash Planet, like don't crash into my planet, but it's Crash Planet. And you can look us up, connect, send us a message, any questions you have, anything that you want to possibly talk about. I'm always willing to lend some information if we already don't have it on our website or on my IG, then I'm willing to find something to share with you. And with that said, everyone, I'm so grateful for your time and your efforts. And I think that everyone is on the right path. If you're in this, you're definitely on the right path. Stop questioning yourself so much. Do more trusting. Compassion. The only things you question are your shitty actions. Question those, but don't question yourself.
Right.
You're on the right path, and know that you're true. And so just, have compassion for yourself today. Let's set an intention that, everyone's going to have compassion for themselves today, and you're going to try to show that to the world.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we will most definitely, link again for sure.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Everything you're doing.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Actually, I am going to stay on for a bit to see if you guys had anything to say, any thoughts or questions. That was amazing. I'm just blown away right now, because I was saying yesterday that I feel like this is like a missing link, that a lot that goes so common sense based, and it's so obvious, and it's literally inside of us, that we don't see it. So we're busy. We're like, who are they? What are they doing? Oh my God, they're doing this and they're doing that. And we need to do this and we need to do that. So we're literally sending ourselves in a frenzy by constantly reacting, when literally we just need to go inside and power up and activate so that we can be the walking gods that we are. We can be who we are. And we can literally, I almost have a vision of if you can visualize a person or visualize yourself just walking down the street. And as you walk down the street, just think of your aura just spreading and expanding and touching everything and everyone around you wherever you go. And it's like you turn into like this fairy, for lack of a better term. And it's like you're touching everyone. And you're, as he said, when you're compassionate to yourself, it just projects outward. And before you know it, there's a domino effect in vibration, because we are all a community and we all respond to each other. So the answer is literally that simple. Sure, there are opposing forces. There are things that are most definitely opposing to a high degree, because we're rising so much in our consciousness. There's that high degree of that negative going downward, that spiral condensing itself. So there's going to be this happening, of course. So we're going to feel it. We're going to recognize it. But it's not really about attacking this. It's about continuing to spiral this way. And on your way in your spiral, you are literally activating, healing. It's like seeing you know, living in a world of black and white for all this time, and then all of a sudden, everywhere you go, it turns into color. And that's how I feel. That's who we are. That's who we are. So that's just what I'm feeling. I'm so glad that we did this in the morning. Something tells me that this weekend is needed. Like, we need to dive into this. The conversation that we had today, we need to dive deeper into this with ourselves. And really, just really like feel that. And it's interesting that he said compassion is the key to communing with your community, your inner community, and actually powering up. Because what I realize is that shame and guilt are literally the lowest emotions to carry on a vibrational scale, period. It's literally at 0. And then I think shame is the actual lowest. If you feel shamed, if there's shame living inside of you that you haven't cleared up just yet and faced, that shame is literally at a bare minimum vibration. So you're really operating in a very slow, dense way. And no wonder you're feeling depressed. No wonder things are never like turning out the way you want them to turn out. It's because if your main subconscious suppressed emotion is guilt, and it's operating like this, meanwhile, everything you want is operating like this. What you got to do, you got to raise that by releasing that guilt. So guilt, shame, the two lowest vibrations. So if you go back into your traumas this weekend, allow yourself to trigger shame and trigger guilt. Shame and guilt are coming up. We have to drop the shame and guilt. So bring up shame first. What do I feel ashamed of in my life? What have I done that I still feel ashamed of, that I have not forgiven myself for yet at all? And I've suppressed it so much that I go about my day just so that I can survive. But all of a sudden, every now and then, there's a trigger that brings out that insecurity to the point where I feel ashamed again and again and again. Let's tackle that. Then next, bring up guilt. Okay, now that I've faced my shame, now what do I feel guilty about? Because they go hand in hand, but they're not the same. Guilt vibrates just a bit higher than shame, but they're both pretty low. So what do I feel guilty about? And go through that list. When you say the word guilt, how do you feel? What pops up? What situations pop up? What people pop up? And how can you clear that guilt? So I feel like guilt and shame, when released, the anchors are like cut. The anchors are cut. It's almost as if, we're trying to do all this other work, but meanwhile, the two main anchors are still there. So trying to raise the vibration of self, it seems so exhausting and so hard. And this is why we get spiritual headaches. This is why we feel exhausted after doing work, spiritual work. It's because we still have these anchors of shame and guilt somewhere just in the ground, under the ocean. Meanwhile, you're trying to move your boat. And it's just like, damn it. See, consciously, I know I want to move forward, but what is holding me back? I can't see it. I can't find it because it's literally anchored into the ocean floor. Of course you can't find it. So let's cut those anchors, okay? The line of the anchor. And let's leave the guilt and the shame behind. And let's move forward. Let's transmute that. So I feel like that's the beginning of self-activating. It's cool and everything to do like the breathing and the meditating and, the rituals and the this and the that, but you got to release the anchors if you want to move forward or if you want to move up. So I'm so grateful for this conversation today. Thank you, Jasmine. So let me see what you guys are saying. I hope I'm in real time right now because it's hard for me to look at the comments. Let me just change screen so that I can go back. And really quickly before we leave, 1 second, let me mute that. I believe, who was it that shared this? Someone shared a video about the bees. And I think I want to end off on that. I want to get her name right. So I just want to make sure. I'm looking for her post. Because we basically confirmed each other yesterday. Brandy Joyner. Okay, so I'm going to end off in sharing this video about the bees, because I feel like after having the conversation with Omar, watching this video with that perspective will shed so much more light on the coding that's in that video. But let me check out the comments over here. Okay. So let's see. Okay, so you guys are just basically watching. All right. Hey, Whitney. Whitney, in psychology, we learned that there is a development level where children start to perceive and feel shame and guilt, and it shames the rest of their development in life. It's no wonder we are cut off from the other realms after childhood commonly. That is a great point, Whitney. Absolutely. We're definitely the shame, the guilt, the punishment for getting things wrong and doing things wrong. It is embedded early on. And I think that most definitely is a part of the program, for sure. That shame guilt program that keeps you binded here. So let me play this video. I hope I'm not frozen. Can someone tell me if I'm frozen or not? Okay, I don't think I am. So I'm going to go and play this video, and definitely want to hear your thoughts in reference to our conversation earlier with Omar. So let me cue this up. Okay, so I'm going to play this video here.
Fragile, built upon various pillars. One of them, human society, is extremely complex and fragile, built upon various pillars. One of them is the honeybee. 1 out of 3 meals eaten by humans is made possible by honeybees. They are so important that if all the honeybees were to die out, thousands of plants would follow, which could lead to millions of people starving in the following years. On top of that, honeybees have a huge economic impact. The dollar value of plants pollinated by them each year is around 265 billion. Food we take for granted would just stop existing without them, or there would be a massive decrease in productivity. Food including apples, onions, pumpkins, and also plants used for feeding livestock, and thus extremely important for our milk and meat. Einstein is often quoted as having said, "If honeybees die out, humans will follow a few years later." Actually, he probably didn't say that, but there might be some truth in the statement. It's unsettling, but honeybees have started to disappear. Millions of hives have died in the last few years. Beekeepers all over the world have seen an annual loss of 30 to 90% of their colonies. In the US alone, bees are steadily declining, from 5 million hives in 1988 to 2.5 million today. Since 2006, a phenomenon called colony collapse disorder has affected honeybees in many countries, and we're not entirely sure what's causing it. All we know is that it's pretty serious. Over the last few decades, bees have seen an invasion of very dangerous foes. Parasites straight out of a horror movie, like a carapace woody. Microscopic white, lymphatic trachea, that's the middle tubes of bees. Here, they lay their eggs and feed from the fluids of their victims, eating them considerably and spending their whole life inside the bees. Or Varroa destructor, a fitting name because they can only reproduce in honeybee hives and are one of the bee's greatest enemies. The female mite enters a honeybee brood cell and lays eggs on the bee larva before it's about to pupate and before the hive bees cover the cell with a wax capping. The eggs hatch, and the young mites and their mother feed on the developing bee in the safety of the capped cell. The bee is not normally killed at this stage, just weakened, so it still has enough strength to chew its way through the wax capping and release itself from the cell. As it does, it releases the mother mite and her new offspring from the cell, and these are free to spread across the hive.
Doesn't this remind you of us? Like, even the fact that, you know, with these mites that are embedded within the larvae, and by the time the bee has hatched, it doesn't kill the bee, it weakens the bee. When we bring children into this world, it's like they've been weakened already by the time that they come into this world. There's a substantial weakening that has happened, and then even more weakening with the vaccinations and so forth. Also, when I'm hearing bee, I'm literally hearing human being. I'm hearing being. We are the bees, and if we pay attention to the bees, we will understand ourselves more, just as Omar compared us to the cells in our bodies. So again, it's parallel, it goes hand in hand. So with that perspective, let's keep that in mind of us being the bees. So I'll continue.
Starting the process over again in a cycle of about 10 days. Their numbers grow exponentially, and after a few months, this can lead to the collapse of the entire beehive. Once outside of the cell, adult mites also suck the bodily fluids of bees and weaken them considerably. To make things worse, they also transmit viruses that harm the bees even more and can lead to birth defects like
vaccinations. That's exactly what the vaccination does. It oh my God, like that's vaccination 101. It also releases the quote unquote, the said virus that it's supposed to protect you from. It releases the virus and it's, oh man.
like useless
Let me run that back for a second.
Things worse, they also transmit viruses that harm the bees even more and can lead to birth defects like useless wings. But there are other threats too, such as viruses and fungi. Under normal circumstances, these phenomena should be manageable and are not enough to explain the horrendous amount of dying going on in bees. Over recent years, new insecticides have been introduced that are deadly to bees. Neonicotinoids, a chemical family similar to nicotine, was approved in the early 1990s as an alternative to chemicals like DDT. They attack insects by harming their nervous systems. Today, they are the most widely used insecticides in the world. Globally, they saw sales of 1.5 billion euros in 2008, representing 24% of the global market for insecticides.
You know what insecticides reminds me of? Social media. As I'm watching this, what social media does based on the current algorithms and what's portrayed in social, on the media just in general, it affects your nervous system. When you wake up in a great mood and all of a sudden you go on to Instagram or Facebook and you see the doom and gloom posts of who got shot yesterday or what's going on here and this beef over here and this drama over here, it's literally an attack. You're allowing yourself to, you're allowing for your nervous system to be attacked. So this triggers the emotions that you will continue to carry throughout the rest of the day. And it stacks up because you're not facing it and confronting it. Therefore, you're suppressing and carrying it and giving birth to more of it. And sooner or later, boom.
In 2013, neonicotinoids were used in the US on about 95% of corn and canola crops, and also on the vast majority of fruit and vegetables like apples, cherries.
And let's not forget the food.
Peaches, oranges, berries, leafy greens, tomatoes, potatoes, cereal grains, rice, nuts, grapes, and many more. Bees come into contact with the toxin while collecting pollen or via contaminated water, often bringing material into the hive where it can accumulate and slowly kill the whole colony. The toxins harm bees in a variety of horrible ways. In high enough doses, it quickly leads to convulsions, paralysis, and death. But even in small doses, it can be fatal. It may lead to bees forgetting how to navigate the world. So bees fly into the wild, get lost, and die alone.
So in small doses, and this is how I feel humanity in itself is being poisoned in small doses. You don't have a sudden death, but what happens to the bee when they collect this insecticide in small doses, they somehow go through some kind of amnesia. They forget who they are, what their purpose is, where they are, what they need to do. Does that sound familiar? So again, we are the bees, and I'll run that back for a second again.
Bees fly into the wild, get lost, and die alone, separated from their hive. It may lead to bees forgetting how to navigate the world. So bees fly into the wild, get lost, and die alone, separated from their hives. If this happens often enough, a hive can lose its ability to sustain itself. We know that neonicotinoids are harmful to bees and that we urgently need an alternative to it. But there are billions of dollars to be made in delaying this. Studies sponsored by the chemical industry magically appear to prove a much lower toxicity to bees compared to those produced by independent scientists. There are even more factors contributing to the demise of bees, like too much genetic uniformity, crop monocultures, poor nutrition due to overcrowding, stress because of human activities, and other pesticides. Each of those factors on its own is a major problem for bees, but together they probably account for colony collapse disorder. With parasites upping their game in recent decades, the honeybees are now fighting for survival. It would be a catastrophe if they lost this fight. This is a conundrum we have to solve if we want to continue living with a relative abundance and diversity of food. Humanity is deeply interconnected with Earth and the other life forms on it. Even if we pretend that we're not, we have to take better care of our surroundings. If not to preserve the beauty of nature, then at least to ensure our own survival. This video is supported by the Australian Academy of...
Okay. I mean, it's right there. It's right there. You want the answers of what's going on in a bigger picture. It's right there. It seems as if there's an opposition to life that I guess its job is to challenge life. It's a war, literally a war between life and not necessarily death, but the opposition of life. I wouldn't say that the opposition of life is death. I would say that the opposition of life is slavery. When you don't have the freedom to explore, to experience, to make choice, when you are manipulated into doing things against your will without knowing, all of these attacks are anti-life, but not necessarily pro-death, because there's another type of life that these organisms or these forces live by. So they're living in their opposition to life. So it's not about death. And as I keep saying, death is just a separation from yourself. So the further and further you get into losing your memories, losing yourself, going deeper into the illusion of the program, that is death. So literally The Walking Dead. So most people are already dead. So it's not even about physically dying. That's just a following manifestation of just not, not being connected to yourself and literally going through the cycle simultaneously. So it's if you want to call it the machine, whatever you want to call this oppositional force, it's necessary for this, I guess, game called life. But it doesn't mean that you have to participate. Once we become more aware and more online, this is easy to override. It's just, I feel like some of us, I'm not even going to say us because I don't want to put that on us. Okay. I feel like some people would rather be slaves. That is anti-life. It is slavery. So we say yes to slavery in so many different ways. And this is colony collapse disorder. So it's very interesting. This is all so interesting. There's so many analogies that we can go crazy with this. Let me see what you guys are saying. That's why we're going to have to leave social media when the time is right. Crystal, I wonder if the cloning of plants, etc., could be a part of this reasoning. Yes, they said a part of what's collapsing or what's causing the bees to also collapse is he said the uniformity of genetics, which kind of reminds me of the cloning, the GMOs, the constant cloning. It confuses the bee. Even the way that crops are planted, bees follow the electromagnetic field because the way that plants usually grow naturally, flowers, plants, all kinds of things, there's a ley line that contributes to the positioning. So the bees, they have this path that they follow when they pollinate. When you see bees go from flower to flower, there's a pattern. Okay, and if you were to zoom out on that bigger picture, you would see sacred geometry because it's literally following the ley lines and the electromagnetic fields of the earth, the magnetic. So bees don't fly, they levitate, right? So it's like, that's what they're doing. So if that system is not there, it throws them off, it knocks them off, it knocks them out of balance. So the way that everything is like harvested in like a straight line, all of these columns and lines, it's not the natural order of growth. So it does confuse the bee and other insects as well who also have a hand in pollination. So yes, I do believe the cloning confuses the bee as well as or the insects period in general, and the way that things are set up. So yeah. So this is just a lot to digest. This is a lot to think about. And also it's interesting, just to end off on this, it's interesting because the post that I saw, so last night, if you guys were on video last night with me, my live cut off at exactly 45 minutes and 45 seconds into the video. My video just went dead, right? And it went dead as soon as I started talking about the black bees that I've been seeing. I've been seeing inverted bees. Now I know there are many different types of bees. There may even be a bee, correct me if I'm wrong or share that information, but there's a type of bee that is black with yellow stripes, possibly. I don't necessarily know. I have to look into that. But what I'm seeing or flying around my house is a black bee with yellow stripes. So I'm seeing that. I'm not seeing the typical honeybee with yellow bodies and black stripes. So as soon as I mentioned that, the video cut off at 45:45, which is 9:09. And I said, well, I guess there's a message for tomorrow when we speak to Omar. I guess we were at our cap with conversation. And then I looked at today's date, and today's date is 5/31, which is in turn, it's basically 5/4, which is an inverted 45, and it's also 9. So it's literally the same number sequence, inverted. As I was talking about the bees, I said there's an inverted bee flying around for the most part, black body, yellow stripes. Video ended at 45:45. Today is actually 5/4. So there's something to that. And on top of that, the woman Brandy, who shared that bee video, thank you very much, Brandy, she also shared that there is so she goes, the irony is that I was planning to attend this weekend. If you're in a DC area, come out and play. And this is basically the Bee Festival in Tacoma Park Farmers Market on this Sunday, June 2nd. So interestingly enough, she shares this, and it's interesting because I am going to be in DC this weekend. This just happened by chance. Mike has something to do, so we're taking a family to DC this weekend. It was so random. And I was just like, I'm supposed to be in DC this weekend? Really? So when she posted that the Bee Festival is happening in DC, when I'm going to be in DC, it's all syncing, like it's all coming together. So I guess with all of this, it's pay attention to the bees. Don't get distracted, and put yourself in the position of the bee. Understand the bee. This is why even with the Queen Bees group, and the Queen Bee thing that we went through, and the track that I shared in that workshop, it was really adding perspective, because with divine femininity, in a sense, because the worker bees are the female bees. They're all female. The queen bee and the sister bees and the daughter bees, they're all female. Okay. And the drone bees, all that they do is mate. They don't, the male bees or the drones, they do not pollinate. They do not, they don't contribute to offer food. They do not help in building the hives. The drone bee, their role and purpose is to mate with the queen to create more worker bees. Okay, so that's their role. So just think about that for a second. So when I thought about that, and also as soon as they mate with the queen, the drone bee dies. And this is a very common thing in the insect world specifically. So I said, well, you know what? When people hear this, they hear the truth of nature in this sense, you kind of like, well, damn, that's kind of messed up that the drones, they have a shitty life. They die right after they mate. Their sole purpose is to simply mate. And they don't do anything else. And on top of that, the drones get kicked out of the hive during winter because the female bees in the hive are just like, we're not feeding you. Like, this is our harvest time. Not harvest time. This is our time to hibernate, basically. And we need all the food that we need up in here. And you're not going to be up in here eating all the food when you have not contributed to it. So I'm sorry, drone bee, you're going to have to leave for this winter. Thank you for your contribution. So people are just like, well, that's mean. Like, nature is so mean. Like, that's not cool. So when I thought about it, I said, well, what if? I said, it's a very interesting thing that they call the male bees drone bees. They also do the same with ants. It's the same setup with ants, the queen ant, the daughter ants, sister ants, and there are the drone ants. It's the same setup. So, okay, I'm like, well, why are they called drones? When you think of a drone, you think of a machine, you think of AI, you think of not organic in a sense. But I don't see drone bees, or I'm not saying that male insects or male bees are not real or not conscious. What I'm saying, though, is that it shows that I feel that the drone bees are literally an extension of the daughter bees or the female bees. It's like having your twin flame. So one is doing this and you have yourself split to do that. So in a sense, the bees are androgynous and they're splitting themselves. And so when we go back and we think about ancient matriarch, like very, 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 very ancient, going back to the androgynous male, female, okay, but mostly female being, who was basically separated because it was a point where women were able to get pregnant on their own and so on because they held both poles, literally, metaphorically, figuratively, energetically, and all of that. So it's almost as if it's just a reflection of humanity that, yes, the males or the men are the splitting of the woman, which is exactly what it is when we go through the process of creation and conception and so forth. They turn into female. Everyone starts out as the female. And then because you got that Y, which is basically, and it's not, I'm not here to say that men are incomplete, Men are very much needed. We need men within this society, within this setup that we need now. Okay, we need and we love our men. But naturally, though, and most men acknowledge this who are conscious, that Y chromosome, it's not a Y, it's basically a broken X. So it is in a sense a part of the genetics that is taken away, so that this XY has a very specific purpose within this setup, the way that it is. So it's genius, it's beautiful, the splitting of one turning into two, so that these two can coexist and work with each other and find each other. So that's how I see the bees. I see the drone bees as literally the men today. And when women are lost, men are automatically lost. This is why this whole war against male, female, masculine, and feminine bullshit, it's a detriment to humanity, only because we say toxic masculinity, it doesn't make any sense, because men turn toxic when women are toxic, okay? They follow suit based on our energy. We control, women, we give off the pheromone. We give off that hormone to the hive that influences everything. Okay, so when we are knocked out of balance, we've been locked out of balance with our wombs, with this birth controls and all kinds of things have been attacking the womb of the woman, the hormones of the woman. So when we're knocked out of balance, hormonally, energetically, we're suppressed, everything, it's going to trickle off into the men, and the men are going to have an adverse effect automatically. So it's us. We are the influence. So we can't sit here and abandon the drone or the male and say, well, you need to do this and you need to do that. They are a part of us, literally. So it's seeing the beauty in this community, as Omar was saying. It makes so much sense. This constant deception and illusion that there's this war against ourselves is insane. So we've turned insane. This is an insane world for real. So how do we rebalance? Back to what Omar was saying, showing compassion to ourselves first, especially, and I'm speaking to the women specifically here, but showing compassion to ourselves as women, healing our wombs in ourselves as women, influencing men with our healing, with our compassion, with our understanding, because women, the matriarch, we are the space holders for creation, period, point blank. We are space holders for creation. It is a beautiful sacrifice that is made so that, it's interesting enough that, we have the dynamic duo of male, female, but we're always referring to our planet as her or she or mother. The matrix, the matrix, it's because it's a space holder for life. So that's just what it is. That's all that there is. There's a space and then there's life, but all life is connected. All life is one, but it's separated to have separate experiences to come together as a community for experience and for life. So again, this is just a beautiful way to look at nature, to look at not just the bees, but you can learn just so much. I was talking to Shannon Yvette on Instagram last night, and she was just like, nature ministers to me. Just sit out in nature, it'll minister to you because you are nature and you remember that. And you start to trigger these hidden memories and you're like, oh man, I am the bee. I am the ant. I am the spider. Like I'm all of these aspects. I'm witnessing all of these aspects of myself that is inside of my body, also doing the same, mimicking what I see on the outside of myself. So in really regaining and remembering that understanding, I feel like we actually have hope. We don't need to overcomplicate any of this if we want to rebalance things the way It needs to, if we want to harmonize and rebalance so that we can truly grow and truly expand as a species. Because we've gotten so arrogant to the point where we really feel like we are being replaced right now as we speak. Same way the bees are being replaced and dying and disappearing. And like, it's a direct reflection. It's a direct parallel. So we need to stop being arrogant and acting like the inevitable on this path of constant chaos without order anytime soon it's not what it is, because that constant chaos just turns into self-destruction. It's like a black hole eating itself. So we become I don't know, we just eat ourselves from the inside out, it seems. We cannibalize ourselves when we constantly are in black hole status. Okay, there's a time and a place for black holeism. Okay, the sucking in, the condensing and starting from point zero. And then there's a time for expansion. But when you're constantly in condensed mode and chaotic mode, and you're not utilizing that energy when it's time to expand, that's when shit blows up. You know, that's the cycle. So this is a cycle of expansion. But what's happening is there are forces that are anti-life, pro-slavery, that want to see that happen. Like that's a good thing. You know, let these humans and, you know, let self-destruct here so that we can reset the way that we need to reset and create more slaves, more drones, more robots, more biobots, more machines, and so forth. This is what we need to do. We need these organisms to self-destruct so that we can control them and turn them into who we are. And this is not anti-machine, anti-AI either, because that's a whole other thing. This is a specific collective that sustains their life specifically by entrapment or entrapping organisms or organic life and transforming it into their thing, because they need to survive as well, you know? But anyway, I'll end that here. We're going into 11 a.m. now, ready to get the day started. I'm excited. I'm pumped up. I'm energized. So you guys enjoy the rest of your day. And again, I would love to hear your thoughts on how we can build on this, because we've literally dived into the building blocks of where to start. Okay. So with that being said, again, enjoy your weekend and I will see you very soon. And the schedule will be up for June. So look out for that as well. So I'll see you guys later. Bye.